My friends, what I'm going to show you today is something they swore up and down for decades would never happen in modern history. The sound you hear echoing right now, coming straight from Brasília, going down the ramps of the Planalto Palace, is the one resonating through the cold and bureaucratic corridors of the Supreme Federal Court. It is definitely not the sound of celebration, not the noise of a triumphant and unshakable democracy. It is the sound of pure, genuine, and uncontrollable despair. It is the stifled cry of an anesthetized system that has finally awakened and realized with absolute terror that its time of impunity is over. My friends, pay attention. This is extremely serious, and no one is talking about it with the courage that the current geopolitical scenario demands. Every single day, thousands of Brazilians send me distressing messages on social media asking exactly the same crucial question. Shimon Oliveira, does Trump's relentless pressure really work in practice? Is it humanly and politically possible to provoke deep structural changes in Brazil by acting from the outside in? The definitive answer to this collective anxiety did not come from a theoretical academic treatise, nor from a shallow opinion article, and much less from journalism. The answer, undeniable, came from the island of Cuba. The land of the Castros, the beating heart of what remains of aging communism, of the Soviet Union, bankrupt and now entering a terminal and irreversible collapse. The historical relic of the Latin American left has crumbled. Now I want you to stick this in your mind and never forget it. We are witnessing the for sale sign being put up at the Vatican of communism. The rotten house of cards collapsed quietly, and openly becoming capitalist became the only lifeline to avoid disappearing forever into the abyss of oblivion. And before I prove this surrender to you with unquestionable official facts, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video because it takes work to make it. Yeah, my friends, what a game board. Look at the scale of the global domino effect. Trump didn't fire the only missile in Havana. He didn't send the only Marine to invade the Caribbean beaches. He acted like a relentless master, suffocating the opposing king without spilling a drop of blood. To understand Cuba's shameful downfall, you need to look at the partners in crime spread across the map. In Venezuela, the dictator Nicolás Maduro finds himself completely trapped in the United States. And the United States, with strategic arrests, is dismantling the cartels, and the structure of the Chavista regime is collapsing under the weight of American intelligence. In Iran, we witnessed the fall of the Ayatollahs and the systematic destruction of their main leaders after the overwhelming siege by Israel and the United States, which paralyzed the machine that financed terrorism in the Middle East. In Europe, Vladimir Putin's Russia, which historically sent billions to keep Fidel Castro's socialist delusion alive, finds itself exhausted, bleeding its own people and destroying its own economy in a war of attrition that has already lasted longer than World War I. With all the key allies bankrupt, dead, or cornered, Donald Trump delivered the checkmate. Total maritime siege, ruthless blockade of ships, absolute isolation, and economic sanctions so harsh that they cut off the supply of oil, currency, and hope. The blockade suffocated the island's finances. The Cuban regime, with nowhere to run and no one to finance them, was forced to kneel before the greatest capitalist power on earth. And if you think for even a second that I'm exaggerating with military rhetoric, let's look at the cold facts and technical data taken directly from the international agency Reuters on June 19, 2026. Pay close attention to the subtext of this ideological death certificate. I'm going to tell you the three most humiliating points on this list. The Cuban lawmakers, the same ruthless party elite who for almost 70 years executed opponents in the dungeons in the name of a failed revolution, have just rubber-stamped in a humiliating and unanimous vote in the National Assembly. A shocking list of more than 175 measures that, in practice, bury the socialist model created in 1959. 175 measures of pure and simple surrender to the free market. They are throwing open the country's doors to private real estate development, allowing foreigners and Cubans abroad to buy property. They are turning gigantic, inefficient state-owned companies into private commercial businesses with real shareholding, allowing companies to hire more than 100 employees without the suffocating interference of the state. For the first time ever, they are allowing private banks to enter the island's financial sector, something that was considered the greatest of all cardinal sins by the old communist doctrine. The ultimate humiliation reached the point where they approved the rampant sale of land, state properties, and government buildings to foreign entities and private individuals. The Vatican of Communism is liquidating its assets for next to nothing because the bureaucratic and failed system they swore to defend can no longer put bread on the people's tables. The highly subsidized public servants, praised by leftist propaganda, such as education and healthcare, have suffered a shameful structural collapse. The Prime Minister, Manuel Marrero Cruz, had the audacity to go public and admit in a pathetic speech that lasted almost 2 hours that the free market is now recognized as the only truly efficient instrument for resource allocation in Cuba. Look at the level of hypocrisy, coward. They destroyed millions of lives only to finally confess that capitalism was always right. President Miguel Diaz-Canel still tried to give a speech to maintain a false sense of dignity, asking people not to give up on socialism. But the whole world noticed the desperation. And behind this smokescreen of economic reforms lies a brutal and silent fact. Raúl Castro, the last living relic of the totalitarian dynasty, was criminally indicted in the United States on murder charges in May. He, cornered and terrified, was the one who sent the letter that was read, ordering that these capitalist privatization measures be urgently approved. It is the unconditional and humiliating surrender of the totalitarian system. And it is exactly here that our narrative crosses the ocean, sweeps down the continent, and lands like a nuclear warhead in Lula's lap. And our narrative, ocean and lands, they soil themselves with fear in the leather chairs of Brasília, and the reasons are crystal clear and logical. If the most closed, most indoctrinated, and most resilient regime in all of the Americas bent its knees and completely surrendered to the force and pressure of Washington, what is the slightest chance that the fragile, corrupt, and unpopular Brazilian system could resist? Absolutely none. Absolutely none. When the United States under Trump decides to implement drastic changes, it acts as an overwhelming steamroller, and the warning has already been given loud and clear. Trump's latest statement about Brazil was a direct, hostile, and surgical message. Trump made it known to everyone. The politicians and judges. Brazil plays hardball, but we know how to play this game even harder. He was unequivocally referring to the relentless and unconstitutional persecutions against Eduardo Bolsonaro and the arbitrary sentence imposed by the Supreme Federal Court on a loyal and outspoken ally of the American leader. The message this sends through the halls of international diplomacy has no historical precedent. The weeping and gnashing of teeth in the Palacio do Planalto reflect the wounded ego of those who realize that their shield of invincibility has melted away. Trump made it clear that the hunt for his allies will not go unpunished and that Cuba is the exact mirror of what awaits in the future. Either they back down from the judicial dictatorship or they will face the fury of harsh sanctions, total financial isolation, ships blocking trade, and the irreversible collapse of the entire national economy. Well, that would be a catastrophic but final outcome. That would be at the very end. Before that, many chances are being given. Because we recognize the historical significance of this major geopolitical shift, we must finalize our analysis. The elite verdict that attests to the death of this parasitic ideology that infiltrated Latin America for so long. I want you to actively speak out. Go down right now to the comments section and type in all caps, and without fear, our two keywords that perfectly sum up the end of the line for the Castro regime and the absolute panic that took over Brasília in this decisive week. Write this, red collapse. I repeat, type it, red collapse. Make your voice echo so that the algorithm, the numbed activists, and the powers that be understand. Once and for all, Brazilians have woken up from the collective hypnosis and are witnessing the fall of the relic in real time. The house of cards has collapsed, and the ego of the Brazilian political elite is deeply wounded because they have finally understood that the artificial power they flaunted has an expiration date. And that expiration date is approaching quickly. Cuba bent the knee not out of benevolence, but because the suffocation of the socialist model collided violently with the concrete wall of the real capitalist economy and the unstoppable pressure of a heavyweight conservative leader on the world stage. The world cried out, and the era of diplomatic tolerance for bloodthirsty dictatorships came to an end. All that's left now is for Brazil to fully wake up from its institutional anesthesia and understand that we have the cards up our sleeve to avoid making the same dark mistakes. If you can see what I see, if the blindfold has fallen from your eyes, take your place at the front of this information war and share this video immediately. They want and work for our silence, but we will give them the overwhelming noise of our resistance. And my friends, let me quickly say something to those who feel they have something important to say, but still haven't managed to turn it into a real digital presence. On July 12th in Curitiba, I will hold an in-person immersion inside a professional studio. I'll show exactly how I built an audience of over 50 million people without relying on a single cent of paid traffic. Nothing. Zero. Pay close attention to what I'm about to tell you now. This is not a motivational talk for the crowd. It's not a generic recorded course. There will be only 10 people in person with me, learning script writing, high-impact recording, assertive positioning, building authority, and total communication in practice, face to face, right here at my table in my studio. And if you want to stop being invisible here on the internet and learn to communicate with the method that breaks through any censorship, the QR code is right here on the screen. Secure your spot. The link is in the description and in the first pinned comment. How did Shimon Oliveira break through the barrier and reach 50 million views every month? How did I manage to get there? And my friends, I'm bringing you the opportunity to break through the million barrier. So, secure your spot, because this could be the turning point in your life. Take the microphone before the system takes it away from you. And of course, because we know perfectly well that the system doesn't just attack your politics, but also your family time and moments of rest. Stop wasting your precious time scrolling through catalogs to choose a movie or series to watch and constantly running into heavy ideological propaganda. Access our channel right now, dedicated exclusively to tips on wonderful series and movies. An absolutely fantastic curation so you can just sit back, relax, and enjoy top quality entertainment with your family. Completely free of woke culture, no forced agendas, and no whining of any kind. Link in the description, in the pinned comment, and in the card that will appear on your screen. Now shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.